The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Assalamu alaikum, this is your brother Muhammad Arshad, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you the 7 habits of highly effective people and how you can become one of them. Now, I've got to tell you something, right? This is a video I've been wanting to make for ages, like absolute ages, right? But I've been putting it off, right? Why have I been putting it off? Because this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, is one of the greatest books I've ever read. It's something that I always used to recommend to every coaching client I ever coached. It's a book, one of the few books that I've read over and over again. And I feel like this is such a great introduction to personal development, to becoming a more effective person. And so because of that, it's like such an amazing book. And I've been kind of, when you procrastinate, you kind of make something very big in your head and you think, oh, if I'm going to do this, I've got to do it properly and I've got to wait and stuff just to honor the book, right? And hopefully this gives you an idea of how amazing I think that this book is, right? But then I thought, you know what, it's important to have that kind of mindset. One of the beliefs I'm trying to build in myself is that quick actions gets quick results. So I want to just get out there and do it for you. So I want to tell you about this book, and I think that this video is really, really going to help you with giving you some focus in terms of developing yourself, thinking about the kind of key areas that you need to focus on. Now, Stephen Covey, he wrote it originally for a group of missionaries. He's a Mormon, and he wrote it for some missionaries that he was training. But now it's become a worldwide phenomenon where you've got the 7 habits for teens, you've got the 7 habits for happy kids. The kids one's really, really good. So what I want to do is just give you an overview of the book and then talk through some of the habits that I think are really, really important. And I think that you could really, really develop yourself amazingly, like completely on another level, become a different person, a better version of yourself just by doing some of these. So before I do that, what is effectiveness, right? Effectiveness. So the way Stephen Covey describes it is he talks about the goose that laid the golden eggs, okay? So he's like, imagine you have a goose that lays golden eggs, and you could make the goose lay eggs and lay eggs and lay eggs. Like, how many would you get them to lay? If you get too many eggs laid, it affects the goose, right? The goose might die because it's laid too many eggs. But if it doesn't lay enough, you don't have enough gold. So how do you do it? And so what he says is that the maximum part where the maximum eggs you can get is the number of eggs you can produce without like having a detrimental effect on the goose, right? So that's how he kind of defines effectiveness. And he says that when it comes to effectiveness with things, we try to make them efficient. So if we've got a machine, we want to make it efficient. With human beings, we try and make them effective. So this is all about making you effective to the level where you're producing a massive amount, but it isn't like absolutely killing you and tearing you apart as well, right? This book is so special because it introduces so many concepts that in the personal development world we take for granted now. So for example, one of the things that it really talks a lot about is paradigm shifts. Paradigm shifts is something when you first discover it, you're like, wow, it's like making you realize that there's other perspectives out there. And the whole book, it actually takes you from having one perspective to going to a completely different place and changing your perspective. And when you go through that perspective, I mean, there's one story he tells in there where he kind of changes your perspective like that, like guaranteed, whoever you are, you're going to listen to that, it's going to change you, right? And you start to realize that there's this whole world there of perspectives. Outside of that, he's kind of split the book into 2 areas. So on one hand, he's got what he calls independence. So he's like, these are the areas that you can do yourself. You don't need nobody else for it, right? And then he's got interdependence, right? And interdependence is basically where now you're in the realm of actually needing other people. And when you go through the habits, you'll see why and how they're kind of related to that as well. So anyway, let's look at the first habit. So the first habit is be proactive. Be proactive. So this is all about taking responsibility, right? Taking responsibility for yourself and taking massive action. Like I thought this was so powerful because and the way he's chosen them, his habits is important as well. This is probably the most important habit. Why? Because if you don't be proactive, if you don't take massive action consistently, you're not going to see the results. You're not going to become effective. You're not going to become a better person. In order for you to do it, you have to take action. You have to be persistent in your action, and you have to take responsibility over yourself to take that action. And this is why whenever you read in the Quran, it always says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, meaning those people who believe in Allah and then do righteous deeds. It never just says, oh, those who believe. No, it's always those who believe and do righteous deeds. Because as Muslims, we have to be proactive in doing good deeds, right? In serving humanity, in doing good for the sake of Allah. So the first habit is all about being proactive, right? And within this, it talks about your circle of concern and your circle of influence. So this is a really important topic as well. This is basically saying that, as human beings, maybe we care about a lot of things. So for example, we all care about our city. We care about the people that are in our neighborhood. We care about, the country. Maybe we care about the ummah. We're concerned for the ummah. So this level of concern, like we have all these concerns, but when we look at our influence, how far does our influence go? Like, although we're concerned about the whole world or the whole ummah, how much influence do we have? Maybe our influence is related only to your own household. Maybe it's related only to you yourself, right? And so this whole thing is about actually increasing your circle of influence so that you can actually make a difference and be effective and be good for your community, right? Increasing your influence to the point where if your influence is even matched to your level of concern, because you don't want to go the other way where you've got like massive influence, but your concern is really low. Like you could change the whole world, you don't really care about it. It's about your concern and influence matching together and about you actually growing those as time goes by. So number one is be proactive. Number two is begin with the end in mind. Now, I've got to tell you, this is one of the saving graces for me. Whenever I've been in meetings, whenever I've been in any situation, I go back to this rule always, right? The rule is begin with the end in mind. Basically, what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? And when you get clear on that, it basically makes everything else easier. If you're not clear on what the end is, then it's a disaster. It's like us getting into a car, right? And we're like, okay, guys, let's get to where we want to get to. And I say, where do you want to get to? And you're like, I don't know, somewhere north. And I'm like, okay, let's go north. But whereabouts north? I don't know, just go north. Like, there's going to be so much confusion, you'll never get to your destination. But if I say, right, we're going to go to Liverpool, right? Inshallah, to win the league, yeah? So we're going to go to Liverpool, and this is how we're going to get there. As soon as you know you're going to Liverpool, your brain starts going, okay, we could take the M1, we could take the M6, we could take the A1, this is how we're going to do it, this way, because of that clarity. And so this applies to big things when you're trying to set your goals for life, but also for smaller things. Like you could be in a meeting, and you're having a discussion in a meeting and everyone's like arguing and confused and someone's going here, someone's going there. And you're like, look, guys, let's bring it back to basics, right? What is the end objective that we want to achieve? And just by you doing that, I promise you, it will make the meeting effective immediately. So the second one is begin with the end in mind, right? The third habit is first things first. First things first. What is this about? This is about doing the things that are most important first, right? So now that we know our objective is this, what's the first thing we need to do? Well, if we're going to Liverpool, maybe we need to arrange some transport. That's the first thing we need to do. Maybe we need to get some fuel. Like whatever the first thing is to actually get to our destination, we're going to do the first things first. Now, another thing that this does is really introduce this super quadrant. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Sometimes it's called Eisenhower's quadrant. Sometimes it's to do with Covey's quadrant. But it basically sets out the different things in your life that you have to do. So, for example, there are some things which are urgent and important, right? Urgent and important. May Allah protect us. If there's a fire right now where you are sitting, that's urgent and that's important, right? And then there's urgent and not important, right? So sometimes like you get a call from a salesperson, it's not really important for you, but it's urgent because the phone's ringing right now, right? So that's urgent and not important. And then you've got not important but urgent. Okay, actually no, then you've got, I'm confusing myself, right? So the first thing you've got is important and urgent, that's the fire. Then you've got not important and urgent, which is the salesperson. And then you also have this other quadrant, which is a quadrant we want to be spending most of our time, important but not urgent. Important but not urgent. What this means is that this is stuff we should be really, really doing, but it's not that urgent right now. It's not a crisis, right? Like good habits that we should be building that will help us to have a better life. And then, of course, there's the fourth quadrant, which we shouldn't really spend any time in, which is not important and not urgent. And this is just like time waste and stuff, right? So from this quadrant, you can actually place out all the things that are important that you need to do and then start doing the things first, which are most relevant. So the third one is first things first. So these three habits, they fall into the whole category of independent, which means you don't need anyone to be proactive. You don't need anyone to begin with the end in mind. You don't need anyone to put first things first, right? These are all independent ones. Now we move on to the habits, the 3 habits which are interdependent, right? Which means that it relies on other people working with others. So habit number 4 is think win-win. So this is another amazing habit. And like, look at the wording. It's not actually like be win-win or do win-win. It's think win-win. It's saying before you even do your actions, have a mindset of win-win. Now, what does that mean? That means that, let's say me and you are negotiating on something, like you want to buy this glass off me or I want to buy it off you, right? The way most people work is, what I need to do is I need to negotiate in such a way where I'm going to win and you're going to lose, right? And you're thinking, I've got to win and he's going to lose, right? So some people do that, win, lose. Then others, they're like, oh, I don't mind if I lose this and you win. And they're like, win. But what he's saying is, in order for us to be proper effective, you need to be thinking win-win, which means that you have this mindset and you have this mutually kind of beneficial thinking where you actually believe that it's possible and you want the other person to win just like yourself. And it creates a whole nother structure. If you truly believe, look, there's a win-win here, then you can go out and find it, as opposed to if you just got that mentality where that person has to lose. So habit number 4 is think win-win. Now, habit number 5, very, very deep for people and stuff. It's seek first to understand, then be understood. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So again, this is so important, because a lot of the time we're like trying to communicate with people and we're like, why didn't they get my point? Why didn't they get my point? I'm trying to explain, you're not listening, all this stuff, right? But at the heart of it, most of the time, the problem is that we ourselves are not willing to understand their side first. And if you actually show understanding, like you go to someone and you sit there and try and understand their entire world without your own biases, and actually listen to the whole thing and show them that you understand it, I promise you they will make an effort to understand you if they really feel understood, right? And so in order for you to feel understood, you need to understand them first, and that will help so much in our communications with people. So that's number 5. And then number 6, the last of the interdependent ones, is synergize. So synergize is basically, it's all about taking all the people that we're working with, bringing them together, and then producing a result then more than what we would get if they were individual, right? So if you have 3 individuals working together, they might produce 300 output of something, right? If they're working individually. Now, if you bring them together, you might find they produce 500, or they might find an amazing way to produce 5,000 because they've come together, and that's called synergy. So these are the 6 kind of habits that fall under independent and interdependence. And then the last habit, which is another one that's really, really kind of ignored by most people, is sharpen the saw. Sharpen the saw. So what is this about? Basically, it comes from another thing that I think Abraham Lincoln, he said, if you gave me like 8 hours to cut down a tree, imagine you had to chop down a tree. He said, of those 8 hours, I would spend 4 hours sharpening the saw, because the sharper my saw, the easier it is for me to cut through the forest, right? And so this is saying, basically, we as human beings, we want to be effective. The way you're going to do that is you have to sharpen the saw. What does that mean? That means that you have to sharpen yourself. You have to grow, you have to develop, you have to get rest and relaxation, and you have to basically recover and get that rest so that you can be even more effective, so that you can be cutthroat, not cutthroat. You don't want to be cutthroat. There's the opposite of that. You want to be able to cut through any challenge, through any obstacle without any problems, because your saw is so sharp, because you're so developed and so amazing as a person that you can go straight through it. So let me just summarize the habits for you. And I always test people. Whenever I meet anyone that I've ever recommended this book to them, I'm always saying, right, what are the 7 habits? And I test them. And the truth is that the more you can remember, the chances are you actually implement it. If you don't remember it, the chances are that you don't implement it, right? So I always have this kind of thing where I get people to go through it. So the first habit is be proactive, right? The second one is begin with the end in mind. The third is first things first. The fourth is, think win-win. The 5th is seek first to understand, then be understood. The 6th is synergize. And then the 7th one is sharpen the saw. So now I just wanted to say to you that I believe this book is awesome. It's incredibly transformational. If you took just this one book and you applied everything you did in this book, you would be amazing. You'd be amazing. Just this one book, right? So my recommendation is that you actually go out there, you order this book, and you order it today. Be proactive. Order that book today and read through it. It will change your life. I hope this has been beneficial for you. If you have any questions about the book, please put it in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. And inshallah, I'll see you on the next one. JazakAllahu khair for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.